Yo, 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 what is going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of our weekly Cave Sports Show.
Welcome.
Co-piloting this show with me today is Soul Controller. Am, of course, Feel the Burn. Unfortunately, we will not be joined by our usual host, Abra Semente. He is not feeling well today, so giving a shout out to him and hoping he feels better and we hit him back
He
for
called
next
out.
week. Yeah, it called out. I mean, it's pretty rainy here in Southern California. We have a big storm going on, across both regions of the state. So it's a little wet and wild out there. But Soul, how are you doing, dude?
Doing well, man. Great. In general, this past week in fantasy was pretty devastating for me. So, and the week prior, so I can't really, as far as football and fantasy football goes, it's been a tough year, but that's that's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way the cookie crumbles, as they would say. Rough going here at the end of fantasy football for both of us. I think we both expected to be in the finals. And unfortunately, we played each other in the third round. But let's do a quick recap and a rundown of what we're going to be talking about today. We got our top performers, as usual, from our Cave League fantasy standing, or week 17. And then we will be moving on to our NFL playoff picture, where we will be going through what has transpired in week 17, what the current playoff landscape looks like at the moment. And we're going to run through some of the games, the important ones that we have on the schedule for week 18 and get an idea of where we think our playoffs will be looking for this season. Okay. So let's kick it right off. Let's start off with the top performer from our Cave League at the quarterback position. And this week is a little blast from the past, some Tom Brady action. He had 432 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Ooh. He added 4 rushing yards, which was a whopping 0.4 points. However, that was cashed in with a rushing touchdown on that one. So it was definitely worth it. And he also had a 2-point conversion from a passing standpoint for a whopping total of 37.68 points. I think I was a week behind on this. I might have had Tom Brady as a favorite pick a couple weeks ago, thinking he was going to go off, I believe, against Arizona. But a week later, and he has his best game of the season. What are your thoughts on that, PQ?
Man, it's crazy. Just like you said, it's a blast from the past. He's by far one of my favorite players of all time. And so I like seeing him do well. And I mean, anytime a quarterback has over 300 yards in a game is pretty beast. You know, for him to have 432 yards, that's just ridiculous. And yeah, man, this would be a career day for some quarterbacks. You know, I don't know Absolutely. If it is for Brady because he's played for so long, but. But yeah, I mean, for some quarterbacks, that'd be the best game of their career. And yeah, I mean, for him to have a rushing touchdown, for Tom Brady to have a rushing touchdown is just ridiculous. Yeah, it must have been a full moon that night. But yeah.
I feel like this is him being inspired because, when we were previewing this game last week, this was pretty much a win and you win the division game for both of these teams. So, this is a career game for a lot of other quarterbacks. For Tom, this is just another Sunday, right? In a meaningful game when it matters most, and he just has an unbelievable performance. All the things that people were talking about, like that he wasn't doing throughout this season, like he was like, okay, watch this, and then boom, bomb to Mike Evans, and then all of a sudden they have chemistry. The way he was directing drives and how he was handling the pressure, this was probably the best thing for Buccaneers fans to see. And on the flip side, this is a scary thing for everyone else in the NFC to see because the Buccaneers are now in the playoffs. Tom Brady, who's the quote unquote best quarterback in the history of the game, is now in the playoffs. Weapons are healthy, defense is healthy for the most part. Running backs are going in healthy. This might be a pretty dangerous recipe for the NFC.
Yeah, definitely going into it with this game, it just lit a new fire for them, I think. And Brady, he's a competitor, so I'm sure he's going to go all out. He'll probably do whatever he has to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. Soul, who do we got for top wide receiver?
Next up, it would be the running back, and it's
sorry, top running back.
No, You're good. You're good. It's Austin Eckler this week for the Los Angeles Chargers, or is this no? Los Angeles Chargers. I always forget they're in LA now, but you and I have mentioned before that we knew that this guy is going to be a star. When Melvin Gordon was still leading the backfield for the Chargers, and it shows that this guy he's kind of like not as talented. Well, I mean, he's plenty talented, but he reminds me of Christian McCaffrey. Maybe in a different system, he could be just as good and get maybe just as much work. Maybe he's a little bit smaller, but I mean, he had an excellent game. He had 10 carries for 122 yards, averaging 12.2 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns, and 4 receptions for 39 yards, which gave him a total of 32.1 points for this week. And yeah, I mean, this is a guy that they do everything with, like they did with Melvin Gordon. They put him out as a receiver. He'll take the handoff. He'll run between the tackles. Pretty much whatever they ask him to do, he'll do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I believe he is also the running back 1 on the season, depending on your scoring. And this was another one running back number 1 performance. He hadn't had that rushing performance like he did at 10 carries, 120 yards. That comes out to a 12.2 per carry, which I think Austin needed. He usually does the majority of his damage in the receiving game, and with Keenan and Mike being out for the majority of the season, he was leaned on pretty heavily in the passing game. So it was good to see him attack from the ground this time. 2 rushing touchdowns, like you said. The 4 catches for 39 yards is actually a down day for him, surprisingly. Yeah. Because of all the work he usually gets in the passing game. But very encouraging sign for both Eckler and the Chargers as they are going into Week 18 as one of the hottest teams in football, winners of 4 straight. And I think they've won like 6 out of the last 7. So,
oh, wow.
Yes, another solid performance. I don't know how different this would have been had Aaron Donald played, because a lot of the runs it looked like were bounced to the outside. But that being said, the Rams could have used a little bit of Aaron Donald on Sunday.
Oh yeah, definitely. A little Aaron Donald never hurts anybody, I don't think.
No,
unless you're playing against him.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you're playing against him. So moving on, wide receiving top performer. Is this like the 4th show in a row where one of the pass catching top performers is linked to the quarterback?
Yeah, it's been a trend, definitely.
It happens every week, right? It feels like. So this week is no different. Mike Evans, top wide receiver for our Cave League. 10 receptions, 207 yards, 3 touchdowns for a whopping 48.7 points. This is the Mike Evans game that we've been waiting for all season. I say we, talking about myself as a proud Mike Evans owner. And could have used this a couple weeks ago, but I guess better late than never. Like I said with Tom, gaining that chemistry back with each other paid dividends in this game. It was a gotta-have-it game with the division on the line, and better late than never for him to score for fantasy managers. Better late than never for him to reconnect with Tom in the passing game. Massive performance. Likely won your week if you had him, and likely led some teams to their fantasy championships. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean it's crazy because we all know Mike Evans to be at least a top 10 receiver for I think the past 2 to 3 seasons, and always at least top 10, maybe top 15. Who knows? But we've been waiting for him to have games like this, and for several weeks it was Godwin. Godwin had been getting all the targets, and Godwin is definitely a dangerous receiver as well. So he's doing damage and doing his work when he needs to. But with Mike Evans having this game going into the next games, it's just going to be more than a handful for defenses. It's going to be exciting to watch them play. It's just I don't know how they're going to manage with two elite receivers, and now they're both in that flow state with Tom Brady where they've got that chemistry and they could get hit from any direction. So yeah, it's going to be exciting. And I'm glad Mike Evans got that game, because it must be frustrating for him not to have the games that he's used to having.
Oh, absolutely. When you're as good and highly touted as Mike has been his whole career, that definitely has to like weigh on you heavy each week. Hearing the noise and what is and isn't going on, and only him and the rest of the team knows.
Yeah.
This game actually marked the 9th consecutive. I can't believe he's been in the league 9 years, by the way, but 9th consecutive 1,000-yard receiving season. So, like you said, just to further emphasize, like, he's supposed to be doing this.
Yeah.
So he really proved a lot of detractors wrong on Sunday, and it just makes that team even that much more scary going into the playoffs. This is not a team I think I want to face right now. And then they're in the luxury, and we'll like touch on this later, but they're in the luxury of being able to to rest, which just you throw in all that, they get into the playoffs, they get a playoff spot. You got people doubting them now, and then you have a performance like this. You soundly win the division. Now you get some rest in week 18.
Right.
Like, man,
right? They're coasting. Yeah, and I mean, one last thing on Mike Evans is like for a receiver, even if it's a top 5 receiver, but for any receiver to have a game with more than 200 yards is just. There's only going to be a handful of receivers that get that within a season. So it's just amazing. It's really awesome. Glad to see that guy get that work done.
Same, dude.
So we have the top performing tight end coming up next, which was a Cowboy, Dalton Schultz. I'm sorry. And it was against Tennessee. He had 7 receptions for 56 yards, averaging 8 yards per catch with 2 touchdowns out of 10 targets, gave him 24.6 fantasy points. And it's just the amount of receptions that got him those points. Of course, this is a full PPR league, so players are getting the full point per reception. If this was a standard league, a different tight end probably would have been the top performer. But yeah, in our leagues, nonetheless, he still had a great game. 7 out of 10 targets, that's 70% catching the ball thrown your way. No one's going to hate on that. And 2 touchdowns. I don't know what the score was in this game, but I'm sure that made up a bulk of the points that they had.
Yeah, this was I believe the Thursday night game, right? This was the game that we'll probably touch on it later as well. But the game where the Titans kind of punted on because this one didn't really matter for them, because Week 18 is the one that matters for their playoff hopes. So they kind of took it easy. But hey, Dalton benefited from it. 24.6 fantasy points from a tight end this season. Very impressive. In a season that's been down across the board for the position. We've talked about it every week, This isn't the same division that we thought it was in terms of, point getters week to week. Kelsey, Andrews, Kittle, very inconsistent seasons this year in terms of fantasy production. Evan Ingram popped off like 1 or 2 weeks, and it's just like, you got guys like Pat Freiermuth who are averaging, like 12 points a game, and that's like a top 5 or 6 tight end on the season. So,
right.
when you get these performances, you got to cherish them, man, and just
Yeah.
appreciate them. So big ups to Dalton here. This might be a
Yeah.
second time that we've talked about him, right?
Yeah, I think so. And
Yeah.
the only thing, I'm not hating on it at all. He had a great performance, but for 7 receptions, I would feel like that you'd be closer to 100 yards for the game. For 7 receptions, but hey, we'll take it anyway.
Yeah, it's the 2 touchdowns that really put him over the edge. Yes,
Yeah.
7 catches, 56 yards. I think a lot of those receptions came on like third down, where they needed
Okay.
5 yards for a first, and he
Yeah.
was just like in the soft coverage, just sitting there. At least from the couple quarters that I saw from this game. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
I
he's a
mean,
trusted target.
yeah, exactly. 10
Hmm.
targets in that
Yeah.
Cowboys offense is no joke, and that's very important going forward for sure.
Yep. Yep.
All right, well, rounding out our top performers, of course, as always, is the defense. Um, this week's top defense is the Green Bay Packers. They had an incredibly impressive performance against the Minnesota Vikings. This was a must-win game for the Packers. And the defense came up big. They didn't allow many points, in between 14 and 17 points. They also had 3 picks. One of them returned for a touchdown. I think the opening kickoff was like 105 yards, and that was returned for a touchdown. They had a fumble recovery, added on a couple sacks, ended up with a total of 23 fantasy points, and now we're a cave standard scoring league for defenses. Um, Man, anytime you can get 20 plus points from a defense, it's a great day.
Oh yeah.
Even in the standard league, more than 10. Because I've seen some weird defensive leagues where like this
Hmm.
would have been like a 40-point game from the defense, but you
Mm.
know, all the bonuses and stuff that these leagues come up with for these defenses. But in the standard league, 23 points. That was just as much or almost as much as Dalton Schultz had in
Yeah.
PPR.
Exactly. Right.
So this is if you took the risk and played the Green Bay Packers defense, I don't know how many people did, because that would have been kind of
Yeah.
gutsy with the offense on the other side. But
Oh yeah.
if you played this D, you reap the benefits for sure.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, that's crazy. It's against Minnesota, who has just such a dangerous offense. It's crazy that they had this many points, but yeah, I mean every team has a week like that. Sometimes the defense just comes alive, or they're just in sync. They're capitalizing on the right opportunities, and they end up with a game like this. So, you know, good for the Packers. But this is definitely not a not a trend they've had this season. I wouldn't. I don't think they're even in the top 10 for defenses. So, but yeah, good job, Packers.
Yeah, I mean, just a keynote on this: they held Justin Jefferson to 1 catch for 15 yards.
Oh my god.
So when that happens, you're bound to
Yeah.
have a great defensive day. I don't know, which is kind of surprising because this game was a blowout, and so I figured there would have been some garbage time opportunities for Justin, and I just looked it up, and he only had 1 catch, 15 yards. So shout out to Jair Alexander in that Packers secondary for showing everyone that JJ is in fact mortal and can
Hmm.
can be stopped. It's
Yeah.
pretty impressive, even more so than this
That is
points.
very impressive.
1 catch, 15 yards. Oof.
Yeah, that is nuts. That's a crazy stat for any defense. So maybe I'm not giving them as much credit as they deserve.
All right. Well, that wraps up our top performers. Let's see. Moving on, we got our Cave League recap. Um, you know, this was one of the most unique weeks in fantasy football and
Mhm.
real NFL football action. Obviously with the situation that happened on Monday with Damar Hamlin, which we will touch on in a little bit. We were provided this little tidbit from ESPN stating that they are going to extend the matchups for Week 17, and then when that game between the Bengals and Bills is decided upon, whether it's canceled or rescheduled, then they will make a decision then. It looks like, from the sound of it, that if the game is rescheduled, then those points that are accumulated in that game will be retroactively counted towards Week 17, which will then open up those matchups, and we'll have a decision on those final scores. If it's canceled, then the scores from this past weekend are locked, and those matchups are final. So I know in a different league that I'm in, I run through Sleeper for the Sleeper app, and they said that Week 17 is final as of now. But if that game gets rescheduled, then they'll, give the commissioners the option to open it up again and retroactively score that game, which to me, that's just a messy situation all around. So with that caveat, we have our Week 17 matchups where yours truly, Bang Bang Niner Game, against your other yours truly, Soul Controller, battled it out for the third spot. And, we had CD's Nuts and Cut My Balls in the championship game. Both.
How ironic, right?
Matchups, yeah, right. How ironic. Both matchups are affected by this postponement. However, the leads are pretty significant. It's going to take a lot for either myself or Cut My Balls to come back in our matchups.
Right. Yeah. So, I think the one that really has more of an effect is between CD's Nuts and Cut My Balls, because I think I'm pulling it up right now just to check, but I'm pretty sure Cut My Balls has 2 Bengals players. So yeah. Anyway, it's definitely more affected for those for their matchup than the other than ours. So we'll see what happens. As you explained already, it's for at least our platform that we're using. It's going to be ultimately decided by that entity, and which is nice because it just takes it out of our hands.
Yeah. And that's honestly, I think, is the best solution, is to go off of whatever platform that you're subscribed to, whatever they decide. That's what we run through. Like if we had an offline league where we controlled it, then sure, it'd be different. I will say that in CD's Nuts Cut My Balls matchup, Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, still active, and on the other side, no one left for CD's Nuts. In our matchup, Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, and Tyler Bass on my side versus Jamar Chase. So both uphill climbs, because I'm chasing 47 points.
Yep.
So
yep.
I would need a massive Josh Allen to Stephon Diggs game and hope that nothing happens with Jamar Chase. So exactly, like it's pretty much a long shot at this point. Both matchups seem like it's going to be locked up here eventually, but we are in a holding pattern until the NFL decides what they're going to do with this game. And it's unfortunate because the prize that we're duking it out for, well, not me and you, but the prize that Cut My Balls and CD's Nuts are duking it out for, the Cave Fantasy Championship belt, is a beauty. And I was hoping
definitely.
As a hardcore wrestling fan, I was hoping to take that home with me.
Yeah, I already had plans for it. I had a space for it set aside already.
But, I was thinking about doing some Mandy Rose type picks, man, and just the league and just laying by the poolside and just taking it everywhere I went, man. Like that thing is nice. I mean, the picture probably doesn't do justice.
Yeah, but there's always next year, and next year I think we're definitely going to have a more competitive, more interesting league. Spice things up a little bit. Probably do like a redraft, like maybe halfway through with a couple keepers, like we've talked about. So
I was going to say, do you want to just kind of run through some ideas that you had?
Yeah, so I definitely want to do a redraft. The main reason, just because I think it'd make things really interesting, and I've never done that before. And we'll still give each team the ability to hold on, or the requirement to hold 2 players, at least
Okay.
2. Yeah, maybe more, but we'll all decide on that. And another thing I wanted to do was in descending order, allow first place to have the first pick in regards to what order they want to draft in for the next season, and then they get to decide what place they pick, their pick would be.
Mm.
So, but yeah, what ideas did you have to throw in there?
Well, personally, I want to get it out of an 8-man league. So we're going to be looking for a couple more people to join, at least 2 to make it 10, possibly 4 to push it to 12.
Yeah,
I've never done a redraft league before. I think that's an interesting concept, and being able to have a couple keepers doesn't just completely abandon like the strong drafts that some of these managers might have, which is nice. But it also will shake things up a bit and keep everyone on their toes. It might actually work out well because we could have some managers that might check out because they just had just awful luck in the first half of the season. Now they can get a chance to really turn it around for the second half, and it could provide some more engagement, which I think would be good.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, I'm just excited for fantasy football. It's one of my favorite things to do during the football season.
Oh yeah,
even,
same here.
Like, outside of the football season, like just following on news and when you see new places and new faces, or new faces and new places throughout the offseason, you get to kind of speculate like, oh man, that offense might be great for fantasy football next year, and like which quarterbacks will where and coordinators and all that jazz. So, football nerd like we are,
Right.
it should be fun. Should be fun.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
like the ideas that were proposed, so looking forward to it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely looking forward to that.
All right. Well, like we just mentioned a couple segments ago, Monday Night Football was tough to watch.
Yeah.
Don't really have any like script for this. Yeah, I don't know about you. Been watching football as long as we have. There haven't been too many moments where, I felt somber and sad like I did watching that Monday Night Football game. Damar Hamlin made a tackle on T. Higgins. It looks like the impact from T. Higgins' helmet and upper body onto Damar Hamlin's chest area caused cardiac arrest, and which led to the game being postponed on the field for several minutes. They ended up having to resuscitate him, provided CPR. Medical personnel rushed to the field, provided CPR. I believe they even got his heart to resuscitate on the field. Transported, I think it was 30 minutes in between the time the impact happened and the ambulance leaving the field. Damar Hamlin is currently. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say I read that his uncle made a statement saying that he had that he quote unquote had died twice. Yeah, and then before they got him to a stable condition. But yeah, like you said, I mean, there's obviously we know this game is a dangerous one. Aside from like boxing or MMA, this is probably the most dangerous sport. I don't know what that's it's very opinionated, and there's also freak accidents that happen, but it's definitely scary for this to happen, especially in the NFL. It's crazy, but a lot of the things that are being talked about are so like I don't know. I'm not sure like what his current condition is like or what the outlook is like for him going forward. How he's going to be affected, how his brain's going to be affected. But I know a big topic that some stations and news stations or sports shows have been talking about that the NFL doesn't seem to have addressed yet is like his compensation and the safety nets that are in place for when a player experiences something like this, and the financial burdens that come with it. So I know that, for example, like in the past, NFL players were given so much pay per disability if something like this happened, and it's been reduced like by like from like I think like 4 times. So if I remember correctly, it went from like 20,000 to like 4,500 per month is what they're allotted, and I'm pretty sure this guy, this Damar's contract was like less than $1 million. I think his sign on bonus was like 160,000, and then his contract was for like 850,000. So right around $1 million. So he's that's a lot of money for for like a couple years, but depending on what has happened to him, his physical state, mental state now, I can't say that even if he makes a 100% recovery that he's going to go back to playing football. Yeah, but what have you heard about that, Feel the Burn?
So there's a lot of things that are being brought up when it comes to this injury and this play. In terms of the financial aspect of this, his contract for this season is guaranteed in terms of the base salary. So every player, we know football contracts aren't fully guaranteed. I'm a big proponent that they should be because of stuff exactly like this. What they signed for, they should see every penny of. In terms of his compensation for this year, I'm fairly certain, based on prior work that I've done, that he will be placed on R and will get the rest of his base salary paid to him for this season. I'm not familiar with his contract. I believe he's on a rookie deal, so whatever language is with the rookie contracts is standard throughout the league. The only difference is the amount of money you make based on where you were drafted. So as long as that contract is active, he will be paid. I'm not sure if you know this, but the NFL gets paid weekly, but they get their salary during the season. So the NFLPA, when they negotiated the CBA recently, was they doubled the weeks for how long they get paid. It used to be just the regular season. So they would take their salary, divide it by 17 weeks. That's what they get paid every week. Now, with the 18th week, they have doubled the amount of weeks where players get paid. So it went from 17 to 18. And since they doubled it, now it's at 36. Okay. Which lengthens the amount of time that they get paid, but the amount of money they get paid per week lessens. So a lot of effects that you'll see on that pay is like players that get elevated from practice squad to the active roster, which happens a lot. That bump in pay or decrease in pay if they, get waived from the active roster, signed to the practice squad. That's where a lot of the effects are. But when a player gets hurt, whatever designation they had, whether it was practice squad or active roster, they're locked into that for the duration of the season as long as they have that IR status. Okay. They can't be moved. They can't be moved in between active or practice squad, so that amount's not going to change. So from my understanding of how this works, Damar will be paid for this season, whatever his base salary was. Going forward, I am not sure what's going to happen because obviously with how long he was out for on the field, who knows what kind of internal damages could have been done. I'm hopeful that we will be seeing him play next season. That's the optimist in me, obviously.
Yeah.
But this does really, um, to me, this should ignite the guaranteed contract debate. Unfortunately, I don't think they can do anything about it until the next CBA comes around. But that also should be it should be pointed out that the decrease in the disability is negotiated by the NFL and the NFL Players Association.
Yeah.
So that should be another talking point to bring that back up, because whoever let that slide, it's not a great look at this point right now.
Oh no. Yeah, and then another stat that I heard in that conversation of the disability is that it's a very low percentage of NFL players who make the disability claim who are actually approved. So a lot of times
Mhm.
they're, if they have really extensive and expensive medical care required, they're having to pay for it out of pocket. And that's just terrible. But so
Yeah.
I looked it up, and Hamlin's contract was for 4 years, for 3,640,000, and then
Okay.
his sign on was 160,000, and so that left his yearly yearly salary at 910,000 per year.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah. So you
I
you
mean,
take that. So you take the base pay, which whatever that amount comes to be, divided by 36, and that's his weekly salary. Yeah, and he's going to be, I assume, placed on IR. I don't know if that move has been made already or not, but I mean, he got injured on the field, so he will be on the injured reserve. Like I said, I don't know what the policies or procedures are for like this kind of injury, and we haven't had this injury happen in modern NFL. I believe I read something about there was a Lions player that had a heart attack and died on the field, in like 70s or 80s. But it was like he was on the bench, I think, or something. When
yeah.
Ryan Clark from the Steelers had like his spleen ruptured due to the altitude in Denver when he was playing in Denver for the Steelers, and he had to get rushed to the hospital. So when he was speaking on this on Monday Night Football, I don't know if you caught it, but like
No.
that might have been one of the best people to talk to about this. He has a sickle cell trait in his body, and when he played in Denver with the Steelers, it ruptured, and he was rushed to the ER. And a similar situation to this, except he was conscious, like he says, like that was his, you know, that was the difference between him and what happened to Damar. Was he was able to talk to people, he was able to communicate, and you could see him react to this in real time and how much it affected him by going through it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what can be done to prevent this, because this seemed like a routine tackle.
Yeah.
That's, I'm sure, going to be brought up next, is like, what are we going to do to prevent this? I don't think there is anything you can do to prevent this.
No.
You can maybe look into like the padding from the shoulders and chest and see if you can add more to it. But like, it sounds like this was just something that happens on like just poor timing of the hit with the way your heart beats, and it hit at the wrong time and shut his heart off. So
Yeah.
I don't know what science can do to fix that, but be prepared for that conversation. Sure.
Right. And at the end of the day, I mean, these players have been playing for years. They know what they're getting into. Like no one's forcing them to play. So it's just like, things happen in every sport. Whether it's soccer, basketball, fighting sports, baseball. There's devastating injuries in every sport, but the opportunity to play at that level is only given to so many. So if you ask most people if they were given that opportunity, they'd probably take it.
Oh, absolutely. And we hear stories all the time. Like you see upbringings of players from all walks of life, and they're just so grateful to be able to play this game, and it's the game they love, the game they grew up on. But when you see something like this, it really puts a lot of stuff into perspective. And this injury too is something, like you said, injuries happen in every sport. This one specifically is like mainly found in baseball and lacrosse, where a player gets hit by an object in the chest or in the upper region, and it affects the heart.
Wow.
So I'm in a umpire group for my son's local little league, and they were asking about this, and one of the chief umpires was like, this is why we need to have defibrillators at every field, because this happens in our sport. So kids get hit all the time in little league baseball.
Yeah.
Don't have control over their arms yet because they're so little. So like you said, this happens in all sports. I think the eyeballs that were on this game and with what happened, because this was a massive game, and we will talk about that as well later. We're gonna see. I think after we get hopefully good news about Damar, there will probably be an off-season long discussion about this injury in this game and Damar, and going forward, what can we do to address this?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but to sum that up, obviously we all just want nothing for the best for this guy and for him to make a speedy recovery. And yeah, that's fingers crossed, prayers up for this guy.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone's seen this picture going around. All the social media platforms for every team changed this to their profile pic. It was a great sight to see the unity from across the league over this. Despite the unfortunate circumstances of this, it should happen. The unifying of everybody and coming together for a cause should happen more often. But absolutely, prayers for Damar, sending thoughts, vibes, everything. Hoping for recovery and rehab, because that was, for me personally, that was the scariest thing I've ever seen on a football field.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Because of this, this has caused a little ripple effect for Week 18. Obviously, we've been talking about it here and how hyped we are for the NFL playoffs. The league has not made a decision on this game. So, based on the current playoff standings, this is what we got. In the AFC, the number 1 seed. Oh, you know what? Let's go back. You had a poll you wanted to recap.
Oh yeah, it was the Mike Evans poll. Pretty much we just put up a poll to see if anyone started him. This was put up after his monster game, just to see who did or did not start him, because he hadn't been having the best games this season. But it was 50-50, which makes sense. For the way that, or for the height of the place where he was probably drafted in most leagues, you probably didn't really have a better option in a lot of times, especially if you're in like a 12-man league, if maybe even more, or depending on how many flex and receiver slots you use in your league. So yeah, but it was 50-50, which kind of what I was expecting.
Yeah, unfortunately, for the majority of the season, I was one of the people that had to say yes. I actually had a couple leagues where I had both him and Godwin, so every week I was kind of just living and dying with Tom Brady, and hoping that his offensive line would keep him upright long enough to feed one of them. So I started Mike Evans in one league. I think he is going to be helping me win third place, which is nice. Get my money back in that league. And then I think I went against him in 2 other leagues, and I'm just getting destroyed, which is unfortunate, but to be expected. You brought up a good point. Where he was drafted, like you almost have to start these guys, right? Like
Yeah.
What is your, let's do a quick fantasy insight from you on this. Do you marry yourself to draft position, or are you quick to kind of brain dump where you drafted somebody as long as the production and opportunity is there?
It's for me. It's all based upon production. It's all based on performance. Um, for example, like Garrett Wilson. He was. I drafted him it must have been one of like the last rounds in two leagues, and one of them was probably even like an automatic pick. But he ended up being like somebody that you could start at a certain point.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah, and so there were times when, say for example, I had like Jeff Wilson, Jamal Williams, and Garrett Wilson, and I needed to start one of them in like a flex position. A lot of times it was kind of matchup based, but at the same time, I always had the expectation that the Jets were going to be behind and needing to throw the ball, and Garrett Wilson is going to be more than likely the beneficiary of those passing plays. So
Yeah, it makes sense.
yeah. So I went with him a lot of times, and then um, on one of those teams, I had Metcalf and Lockett, and there were weeks where, yeah, there was like 1 or 2 weeks where I started both of them, but eventually, just because of the receivers that I had, so I had Devontae Adams, Godwin, and Lockett, Metcalf, and Garrett Wilson, and I had Olave as well. So
Good.
yeah, so I was starting. Adams, I was starting every single week. Godwin, I was starting every week, and then ultimately, probably 75% of the time, I was starting Lockett over Metcalf until he had that injury. Then I started Metcalf, but yeah, and the way that I made that decision is just because of their averages. They both have different roles as receivers with their team, but it just seems like that Lockett is the more dependable receiver, at least this season. And I think
Lockett
Metcalf
seems
is
to
a.
be. Sorry, go ahead.
I think Metcalf is more of a high risk, high reward, or high risk, high reward type receiver in comparison to Lockett.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That group of receivers in Seattle is very comparable to what Tampa has, with that one guy who's the boomer bust, more or less, and then the other guy who's Mr. Consistent. And on both those teams, it seems like Godwin and Lockett are the ones that are consistent, and then Evans and Metcalf are the ones that can get you those 40-point games.
Right.
So it's a very, comparable situation. For me personally, though, like if I'm struggling with a starter sit, like I tend to think to myself, who would I rather be upset about benching if they do go off and costing me the win? And so I usually would resign myself to okay, if I start Evans and he doesn't do well, but I have Isaiah McKenzie on my bench and he ends up having a career day, I can live with that. Yeah. Whereas if it was inverse, I'm like, I don't know if I want to deal with that for a whole week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a good point that you say that, because sometimes I forget to look at it that way. Mm-hmm. I try to, and altogether we try to trust our gut, right? But recently in one of the later weeks, I needed to start a flex, and I had been starting Jamal Williams for a good probably till week 7. Every single week I was just starting him, and I ended up starting Garrett Wilson over him in a flex position, and it wasn't the right decision. And I was like, oh well, recently Garrett Wilson had been having the better games, but especially with Williams being in a committee. But it was that week where I really, I had put more trust in Williams the entire season, and the 1 week that I didn't, came around to bite me in the ass. And, that sucks.
Yeah, it really sucks to have to live with that too. So that's where it's almost as if you think about the negative and you let the negative, take advantage, and you're like, you know what, I'm just going to stick with this guy who who is the tried and true, even though the other guy might blow up. And this could be that one
Yeah.
week. You stick with the Mike Evans over the Isaiah McKenzie's.
Yeah. 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 So it's
Especially when he
tough.
puts up 40 points in a week.
Oh yeah.
He can do that, and you
Right.
see it happen.
Yeah.
So you're chasing that more often than not. But yeah, it's tough sometimes for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it's also, but the thing that makes it sting even more is when you've been starting one player for like the first 7-8 weeks, and then you're debating on whether to start them again.
Yeah.
In a flex position instead of like an RB1 spot. So
Oh yeah. Yeah. For
yeah.
sure.
But
I think there were a couple. There was I would say a few players this year that people will be talking about that exact situation about this offseason and what they want to avoid for next year. Because there were some first round, or not first round, but RB1s in terms of like being an RB1 on the NFL team and their depth chart that
yeah.
did not perform how they were supposed to. So yeah,
Yeah.
something to look out for in the offseason is the retrospective of making those decisions.
Right.
Yeah. So with that being said, let's look to the future of the NFL and see what is ahead of us with that playoff picture. The current bracket, if you will, looks like this. We have the Kansas City Chiefs as the 1 seed, Buffalo Bills at the 2, Cincinnati Bengals at the 3, Jacksonville at the 4, Chargers 5, Ravens 6, and the New England Patriots 7. Over in the NFC, we have the Eagles at 1, the 49ers at 2, the Vikings at 3, Buccaneers at 4, Cowboys at 5, the Giants at 6, and the Seattle Seahawks at 7. Like we said, that postponement of the Bengals Bills game is causing a little ripple effect in the AFC with the seeding, since that game has not been concluded and there's no final decision yet. The Kansas City Chiefs are sitting atop the AFC with the first round bye. Just for argument's sake, if the Bills had ended up winning that game, they would be the 1 seed and Kansas City would have to be through the playoffs. On the flip side, if Cincinnati were to have won that Monday Night Football game, they would have clinched the AFC North, which would put less importance on the Ravens-Bengals game this Sunday, and they would have a shot at the 1 seed in the AFC as well, based on tiebreakers and records and all that jazz. So I don't know what the right decision is. I think the NFL has to decide what the best of the bad situations are, like what the best of the bad results could be. It sounds like there's some rumblings over having it be a no contest, which you would not have that game played. I feel like there's going to be backlash regardless of what happens. So you kind of have to side on the fact, or side on the option that provides the least amount of resistance from fan bases, and franchises. What do you think about that, Soul?
Yeah. It's a really tough situation to be in, and it's such a rare occurrence where whatever decision they end up making in regards to the Bengals and Bills game, it's probably going to be a learning experience, although it's so rare for something like that to come up. But I don't know. I know for sure I wouldn't want to be the one to have to make that decision.
Right?
But yeah, but it seems like the one thing that they can control is to not inconvenience what's already planned ahead. So
Mhm.
it may be best to let it be a no contest, or I don't even remember what the score was, or if there had been any score during the game at that point in time. So maybe they should let the scoreboard be what it is, when the game ended.
Yeah, that was something I thought of too. The score is currently 7-3 Bengals.
Yeah. So, it's nothing that anybody wished for.
No.
It's nothing that could have been, it couldn't have been avoided. It's something that just happened so randomly and so unfortunately that it's really one of those things where you got to do the least damage. You don't want to. I feel like them allowing the game to happen or to be continued going forward would just be like more of an inconvenience for everyone, especially those two teams. So yeah, I really think that if I had to trust my gut, I'm pretty sure they're either going to let it be a no contest or they're going to let the game end as it did and let that be the deciding factor as far as what the score was when the game ended. Or maybe it'd be like a draw. Cut My Balls says he wants it to be rock, paper, scissors for the winner.
Yeah, that was something I heard today brought up. Was a coin toss for that game, and whoever wins the coin toss wins the game. I also heard of the possibility of pushing back the playoffs and getting rid of that bye week before the Super Bowl, which just based on what I've seen in the past, Super Bowl week, that could be a logistical nightmare in terms of having to rush from the conference championship going straight into media week the next day, because they all fly into whatever location it is. This year it's Arizona, and both teams practice there all week and they have press conferences all week. It's a big media deal, and it also kind of screws over the Pro Bowl, which honestly I don't think people would be too opposed about, but that's a big deal in terms of being a popular event for fans to go to. I know this year they're doing was it flag football between, you got Peyton Manning's team against Eli Manning's team, so they're going to try doing skills and flag football and all that, which is kind of unique, but that's normally forgot about. So they could push that back a week, give everybody a bye, except for the Bengals and the Bills for the theoretical week 19, and then start the playoffs right after.
Yeah, and see, that's what I'm saying is that with it disrupting future plans or things that are already expected to happen as far as like the logistics and the schedule, it just seems like it's going to be creating more problem than anything else.
Yeah.
So
such an unfortunate situation, because now the ripple effects that we've been talking about is just it's pretty massive, yeah. And I do not envy the decision makers for this decision. This is a pretty big one too.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Yep, exactly. I know this time next week we will likely have something to talk about in terms of what decision they made, how it was received, and the Week 18 recap. So speaking of, we have a list of games that you and I are going to go over for this week. We've isolated all of the games for the upcoming slate that have playoff implications. We could run through them real quick, and then we have some picks.
Yeah.
Kansas City and Vegas Saturday, kicking us off. I think it's on ESPN. Not really a massive game, but Kansas City can theoretically lock up the 1 seed in the AFC with a win. Vegas isn't playing for it much except for pride. They had a very impressive performance against the Niners last week.
Yeah.
Should have probably won that game.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe they show up and they take the decision out of the NFL's hands and beat the Chiefs, and then no harm, no foul.
Right.
Saturday night, one of the biggest games of the weekend, because this is theoretically a winner take all, or a win and you're in game. Tennessee travels to Jacksonville. The winner of this game wins the AFC South and the 4 seed in the AFC, which means they will have a home game for the first round of the playoffs. If Tennessee loses, they're out. If Jacksonville loses, they need some help to capture the 7 seed.
Okay.
What do you think of those two games for Saturday night?
Yeah, so for Kansas City and Vegas, if I had to choose a winner, which is what we're doing, I would
Yeah.
have to go with Kansas City.
Yep.
There's just no Steedham. Is it Steidham or Steedham for the
Stidham.
Raiders? Steedham. Yeah, I mean he had a great game. Maybe he could be that spark within their offense, but like you said, it's just a little bit too little, too late. Um, and yeah, Kansas City is still a powerhouse. I don't see the Raiders beating them. Although last season, if I remember correctly, it was a close game. The last game that they played each other.
I think Vegas might have actually beaten Kansas City last year in Kansas City,
Okay,
or
so
if not last year, the year before.
yeah, so
Maybe.
the game has it's got a lot of they both play passionately when they play against each other.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, so but yeah, definitely Kansas City. How about
I am
yourself?
with you on that. I lean KC all the way. They're gonna want that one seed. Obviously, depending on what happens with all this is prefaced by that's just we're operating under the assumption that the Buffalo Cincinnati game will not be played.
Mhm.
So Kansas City playing for the one seed. They're going to be motivated. They're going to handle business against Vegas, and I don't think this one's going to be close like last week's was. I don't know if it was this game. No, I think it's a later game. Arizona. They're going to be without DeAndre Hopkins. I was thinking maybe Devontae Adams would be out. We'll see. What the injury report looks like for
Mhm.
Vegas and Kansas City, depending on how close it theoretically could be. But yeah, I have Kansas City as well. Tennessee and Jacksonville. I on this show have said repeatedly,
Mhm.
watch out for Jacksonville. Watch out for Jacksonville. They could sneak their way in the playoffs. I think they get the job done on Saturday night under the bright lights in Duval and beat the Tennessee Titans in a close matchup. I don't have a score or anything like that, but I think
Yeah.
Jacksonville comes away with the win.
Yeah, I'm going with Tennessee on this one. That's just what my gut's telling me, but Jacksonville has definitely surprised us quite often this season. So who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? It's anyone's game at this point.
Yeah, I think I'd feel more comfortable if Ryan Tannehill was playing for the Titans. But it looks like another Malik Willis game, and he has not looked great all season. So Jacksonville seems hungry. They got Doug Peterson too, just in his bag so far the second half of the season, just calling all the right plays, making all the right decisions. Got Trevor Lawrence looking like a Heisman again, or looking like he did when he was in college. Defense is rolling. Jacksonville's a scary team.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
We'll see though.
all right, Sunday morning. Quite a few games Sunday morning. New England at Buffalo. This one will be interesting to say the least. This is expected to be the first game that is resumed for Buffalo after the tragic injury to Damar. Um, they might not be playing for a bye, but they're playing the Patriots, so that's a divisional
Yeah.
opponent. I'm very thankful that the NFL does this for the last week of the season. They always match up teams within the division to round out the season, which I think is very smart. They're looking to play spoiler and keep the Patriots out of the playoffs. I have Buffalo winning this game in a spirited effort by the entire team and keeping the Patriots out of the playoffs. What say you?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Buffalo is just one of those teams that has been firing on all cylinders this season, both offensive and defensively. New England is, they've had their heights this season, but they're not the team that we've seen them be in the past. Tom Brady's not there anymore. So they may put up a good fight, but I definitely see Buffalo winning this game.
As usual between you and me with these games. Next up, Jets at Dolphins. Jets were officially eliminated last week. So they aren't playing for anything but pride at this point and looking to keep the Dolphins out of the playoffs. I believe the Dolphins are the only team currently in that set. No, New England was. If New England wins, they make the 7 seed. If New England loses, which you and I both think they do, and Miami wins, Miami would be the 7 seed. Who do you got in this matchup?
I do have Miami winning.
Okay.
The Jets, they've had too much trouble at quarterback position and the running back position. They've been struggling the last few weeks. As of right now, they're just kind of uh, trying to see which players can do what. They're probably already looking into the future. So yeah, I don't see them doing anything drastic.
Mhm.
Yeah, with the game being more meaningful for Miami, I see Miami winning this game.
Yeah, those are all good points. I have the Jets winning this game. I think Robert Saleh is going to have them motivated to win this game. I don't quite trust. I don't know if this is like the obvious answer, but I don't trust the third string quarterback for Miami to lead that team to victory. I think this is going to be an ugly game. I think this is going to be a low scoring game, just based on all the factors that are around it. But I
Yeah,
think the Jets are going to be playing spoiler this weekend and keeping the Dolphins out of the playoffs.
it's possible, definitely. The Jets, they do have a very underrated defense.
Mhm.
Um, their pass rush is just like it's just really great. I mean, it's better than a lot of teams in the NFL currently. Um, if their offense matched their defense, they'd probably be a really good team this season.
Agreed on that one.
Yeah, still going for Miami though.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that one's almost a coin flip. Moving on, Minnesota, Chicago. This one's on here because this affects the seeding in the NFC. Um, Key note here: it was announced today that Justin Fields will not be playing in this game. So they're going to be keeping him out. Um, but yeah, for that reason, and because I think Minnesota is just a better team, I'm going with Minnesota here.
Okay. Um, Man, that's tough because I didn't know that Fields wasn't going to play. I thought he was. With that being said, originally I thought it would be Chicago, but with Fields not playing, I'd have to pick Minnesota. Yeah,
That makes
it's
sense.
just Fields just is just too impactful.
To me, that's like they're not going to be trying all that much. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, it feels like that won't be a trap game. Whereas if Fields was playing, that would be pretty interesting because Minnesota did not look good against Green Bay last week.
yeah. So yeah, it's just with Fields not being in there. I mean, that just changes the whole thing.
Oh
So
yeah,
yeah. So
Fields is your
I
guy too. You're a Justin Fields fan, huh?
just this year, pretty much when he when
Yeah,
he started, yeah, when he started going off, I really didn't know much about him before. Just noticed that he started putting up points.
yeah. He had a breakout season for sure, both in real life, both in the NFL season and the fantasy season. That's going to
Mhm.
be a name that I'm pretty sure we will keep our eyes on going forward. So you have Minnesota, and I got Minnesota. Cool. Next up,
Mhm.
Cleveland and Pittsburgh. Important game for Pittsburgh. So, all of a sudden, these last few weeks they've turned it on and had some crucial and key wins. I don't think a lot of people thought that even they would be here at this point, except for actually,
Yeah,
diehard Yinzers from
yeah.
Pittsburgh. But who do you got in this one?
I've got Cleveland. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I don't know if the young quarterback with Pittsburgh is going to be able to lead the team to a victory like that, especially at this point in the season.
Hmm.
And Cleveland, they've got so many talented players. It's going to be difficult to just keep them under control. With Chubbs, and Watson's there, and he's kind of been improving from week to week. Yeah, so I'm going with Cleveland in this game.
Interesting. And I seem to recall growing up with you that you were a Steelers fan. So I'm kind of surprised. I don't know if that's changed or not in the years that have passed.
Yeah, it did change. I mean, I stopped following them when Polamalu retired.
Polamalu,
yeah, and he was by far my favorite player, but also the people that were part of like his team, like James Ferrier, Heinz Ward, Ryan Clark, all those guys. Like those are the players that I grew up watching and which made me love the team. Jerome Bettis, Willie Parker, Deuce Staley, Heath Miller,
Amos Zeraway.
What's that?
The old running back Amos Zeraway had a little shine there in Pittsburgh for a little bit, and I just remember that because those famous Amos, like the cookies.
Okay, I don't even remember him. Yeah, but Randall L was there for a little bit.
Antoine,
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, those were the players that made me really love the Steelers, and when Polamalu stopped playing, I pretty much just kind of lost interest.
Interesting.
And then fantasy made me more of a fan of players,
Yeah, it's really easy to get to like become a fan of players when you're watching like everybody play every week, especially when you quote unquote own them because they're on your team. So that makes a lot of sense. That being said, I think Pittsburgh will pull it off and sneak into the playoffs. I got them beating Cleveland. This is also a big game because if the Pittsburgh Steelers win, this would secure another season for Mike Tomlin where he does not have a losing season.
Wow.
Which,
oh my God.
As a head coach, he's never had a losing season. That is so impressive.
That is so impressive. Yeah, right. That's unbelievable, man.
That is unreal. I couldn't believe it when I heard it because I know last year there was rumblings about it, and like that week when I heard about it, like they tied with Detroit. I figured I didn't really pay attention all that much at the end of last season, so I thought they had like lost that stat, but no, he ended up I think last year 8-1.
Wow.
This year he's going for the I don't know how many seasons it's been since he's been coach. It's gotta be like what 14 now.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Just he doesn't lose.
Yeah, his recipe has been perfected.
Yeah, he's got
to an extent. Yeah,
yeah. Like it doesn't matter. These last 2 years he hasn't had Ben, right? Or did Ben retire last year?
I think it was last year.
Yeah, and he didn't have him for the whole season. I think there were some games he was out, right?
Yeah,
but he's been able to maneuver this season without that leadership and that consistent part of the team and that franchise, and they're in a position to make the playoffs this year. So I am rolling with Pittsburgh. Last game of the morning. This was officially announced today that this will take 1 p.m. Eastern. Is Baltimore at Cincinnati? Because of the end of the Monday Night Football game, this appears to be for the division. Baltimore wins the North. Cincinnati wins. They win the North. Pretty big deal.
Yeah.
That being said, I think Cincinnati will be pulling off the win.
Yeah, I agree 100%, especially because I think Lamar Jackson's still questionable about whether he'll be playing.
Yep. Bingo.
So, yeah, without Lamar Jackson, they're still very talented, but he has, just like Justin Fields, he has too much of an impact on their offense where I don't think they'll pull it off without him. And especially not against Cincinnati.
I agree completely. Lamar Jackson, as we've seen, has completely, and for Baltimore, and then in the NFC with the Eagles, losing those quarterbacks, has changed those teams. So it's sad to see because those are teams that when healthy are at top of each conference.
Yeah.
But both have had a bit of a stutter since their quarterbacks have gone down with injury. So I think the spiral continues. I think they might be selectively holding out Lamar at this point to make sure he's good for the playoffs, because the way they play football, it will travel no matter where they go. Like what they do on the football field can play in any type of weather, can play in any stadium. So they will have a shot with Lamar under center no matter where they go. So keep him out, get him healthy, get it rolling for the playoffs. Baltimore will be a team that is scary and no one will want to play in the AFC.
Yep, for sure.
Moving on to those aforementioned Eagles. They are playing host to the New York Giants. 125 game. I believe this game is at 125 because it has important contingencies attached to it. If Philadelphia wins, they lock up the 1 seed in the NFC, which gives them the first round bye, and home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Giants win does the thing for them. Because they can't even catch either them or Dallas in the standings for the 5 seed. So they're pretty much locked in at the 6. Who do you got in this game?
Philadelphia for sure. Even if Hurts is out, collectively I still think they can win. They've got a lot of talent on their team between like Goddard, Miles Sanders, AJ Brown, and I think Gardner Minshew is good enough to where he can manage the game, make the important passes, make the short passes, and keep the offense moving forward, and just secure a win. I don't really see the Giants being able to take over the game and win that game.
So I do think they can do that. I think this is going to end up being Brian Daboll's signature win of the season. I think they are going to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the way that the Eagles played last week against New Orleans, the Giants could emulate that as close as possible. They could. I think Saquon Barkley is going to take over. He's going to end up taking over late and holding them. Or holding the Eagles at bay. I think Giants are going to get up to an early lead and just ride it the whole game. Call me crazy because, with these later games, this is going to cause a massive shift in the NFC. But I think this is the game where we look back on for the season for the Giants and for Brian Daboll, as this was the win that propelled them to play spoiler in the NFC as well going forward. There was a report that came out that Brian Daboll was actually testing Daniel Jones, like by calling plays that would put him in adverse situations to see how he would combat it. That came across my feed and I was like, there's no way a coach would jeopardize that. But it sounds like they've unlocked Daniel Jones. He's been playing pretty well. I think the Giants pulled the upset on this one, sending shockwaves throughout the conference in the process, as we will get into later. Next up, Chargers at Broncos. I'll keep this short and sweet. I think because based off of what I think will happen earlier in the day, with the Bengals winning and then causing the Ravens to secure the 6th seed, I think the Chargers will end up winning this game. This is going to be a very close one because I don't think a lot of their starters will be playing, because if Baltimore loses, the Chargers lock up the 5 seed, no matter if they win or lose. I think it's going to be very close. It's going to end up being close. Don't be surprised if the Chargers lose, but I got them winning because I think that Staley will have them tuned up as much as possible to keep momentum going into the playoffs. However, with their fate sealed, they might swap out some players late in this game, but I have the Chargers winning. What about you?
Yeah, same here. And even if they do rest a lot of their starters, I still would be confident that they would win. So yeah, I don't see the Broncos winning that game at all.
No,
If a
Mm.
Brusamente wants to like put something on that wager,
Oof.
that game, I'm open to it. Let me
You
know.
know, I'm thinking about this game, and crazy stuff has been happening to the Chargers in Denver throughout the years.
Mm.
But I think it's time for something normal to happen, and so that's why I'm combating my own thoughts about why I feel like the Chargers would lose this game.
Hmm.
Um, because I think the people that are in decision making powers for their football team um, are going to keep them focused throughout this game, and they're gonna seal this win, um, and they're going to ride that momentum into a lengthy playoff run, hopefully, um, and cause some havoc in the AFC. So I was going to say, you know what, maybe I'm going to change to Denver, but no, I'm going to stick to the Chargers. They're going to lock up the fifth seed and have an impressive performance in Denver.
Yeah, even with their backups playing.
Yeah, even with I personally, I mean, I love Chase Daniel. I would love to see Easton Stick get some love at quarterback this weekend. It'll be very interesting to see because I saw Justin Herbert popped up today on the injury report. It'll be interesting to see if Easton Stick suits up or if he is not on the inactive report going into that game. Because he's a quarterback that probably not many people have heard of.
No, never heard of him.
Yeah, he's got some tools. He's been on the team for a while now. I think he was the quarterback either before Trey Lance or before Carson Wentz. No, he was sandwiched in between Trey Lance and Carson Wentz at North Dakota. So he was a product of that system. Yeah, I just have a soft spot for Easton Stick because he looks good in practice and in training camp. So moving on though, Dallas and Washington. I am going with Dallas. I don't think this one is going to be all that close. Washington announced that they're going to be having their third string quarterback play in this game to see what they have, rookie third stringer. So yeah, I'm going Dallas. How about you?
Yeah, Dallas. Dallas is. I'm pretty sure they would dominate that game, honestly. So, yeah, I mean their defense and their offense is just a lot of the majority of the games. I feel like has been firing pretty hot. So, yeah, I don't see Washington winning that game at all.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be particularly close either.
Yeah. No.
So moving on. Let's see, last two afternoon games. Rams at Seattle. This game is important because if the Seahawks win, then it eliminates the Lions, who play later on Sunday Night Football. If they lose, then the Sunday Night Football then becomes win and you're in between the Lions and the Packers. Who do you have in this game?
Yeah, I got the Seahawks. I don't think this is the Rams' year. Obviously, they haven't done the best this season. And the Seahawks, they just got a lot of talent. You know, they've got Lockett, Metcalf, and their quarterback's been doing great this season, finally. And yeah, it's especially with the Rams kind of like in a place where, you know, with Aaron Donald not playing, Kupp is not playing. Yeah, I don't think they want to risk too much, you know, with only a couple games left in the season. So, yeah, I see them playing like, you know, giving other people a couple looks that they normally wouldn't get, and just trying to finish out the season strong, you know.
Yeah, I think the opposite. I think Rams are going to be playing spoilers, and just like I said, NFC is going to be chaotic this weekend. I have the Rams winning this game very closely. I, for some reason, just think they're going to be up for this game, and it's going to cause absolute madness in the NFC. It's then going to make that Sunday Night Football game that much more important for both of those teams. So I have the Rams winning this game, surprisingly.
Yeah, I'd be blown away if they did, honestly.
Well, prepared to get blown, brother. I'm just kidding.
All right, you said it.
Man, I really want the Rams to win because I do. Like I said, I want madness in the NFC because the way
sure.
that this is the way this could play out, man. based on my picks is very exciting. Um, Last of the afternoon games, Arizona at San Francisco. Like I mentioned earlier, DeAndre Hopkins will not be playing in this game.
Yeah.
Arizona got good news recently. Kyler Murray did have successful surgery on his knee, so he was looking to make a speedy recovery for next season. This is J.J. Watt's last game as a NFL player. He will be retiring after this game.
Wow.
It's in San Francisco. Debo Samuel practiced in full today. He might be making a comeback for this game. I have the San Francisco 49ers winning this ball game. What say you?
Yeah, I agree 100%. Without Kyler, without DeAndre, it's that's makes up like 60% of their offense at least, if not more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, what's their losing streak? Haven't they lost like
Oh, jeez.
like 10 games in a row?
Something like that. It has not been pretty for the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't see them winning against the best defense in the league by any means without their two best offensive players. So, and is it just is it just coincidence that Hopkins is sitting out, or why is he sitting out this game?
I don't know why. I think he ended up on the injury report, quote unquote. But this could be preserving him for next season. This game doesn't matter. They've lost 6 in a row, so this would be number 7 for them. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be particularly close either. Rumblings of Cliff Kingsbury possibly losing his job after this game. I don't know about all that. But yeah, with the Niners winning this game, this could be very rewarding for them with this win, as we will discuss here shortly. Last game, Sunday Night Football main event, Lions at Packers. Aaron Rodgers in prime time, right? At Lambeau in January. What? Yeah, I got Green Bay all the way in this game.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's just, especially if it's a game, like you said, where it's winning, they're in it. I think that's like where Rodgers thrives the most. I think he likes to be up against, with the back to his wall, trying to fight his way out of it. I think that's what he likes, Yep. And so, if that, especially if that is the case, then for sure I would see Green Bay winning that game.
The way Aaron was slapping the base in his touchdown celebration last game at home in Lambeau against the Vikings, the way that they performed in that game, I just, man, they're gonna sneak into these gosh darn playoffs. 5 weeks ago, we were like, oh, they're dead. Huzzah! Everyone gets to see the Packers out of the playoffs. Nope, they're gonna sneak their little way into it, and man, that's gonna be insane. Yeah. All right, so. Did you want to add anything to that?
all I was going to say is that, to help Rodgers and Aaron Jones, it's Christian Watson, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
I mean, he just blew up, and I feel like he's going to be. I think this is just the beginning. I think he's just going to only continue to improve. So, we'll see what happens.
Watching these games over these past couple of weeks with certain teams, hearing stuff like, oh, when the Packers won their Super Bowl most recently, when Rodgers was on the team, like they had to win in the last week of the season and get in too as a wild card, and they ended up running the table. And I'm just sitting there like, yeah, I definitely could see that happening. People talking about Tom Brady and the Buccaneers a few weeks ago, actually half a season ago, saying, would it surprise you if Tampa Bay, played mediocre all year, snuck into the playoffs, and then, oh my God, they got to host, Philadelphia and Jalen Hurts, or they got to host the Cowboys, and how they choke in the playoffs, and then all of a sudden they're going to San Francisco. It's just like, yeah, I could see this stuff happening, and it's exciting, honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
Like for me at this stage, having guys like Rodgers and Brady in the playoffs is good for football. You want the stars in football to be playing in the playoffs in the games that matter most. As a fan of switching sports to baseball, I'm a fan of the Angels, and not seeing Mike Trout and Shohei in the playoffs sucks. So wanting to see the top stars in the playoffs when it matters most, games on the line, legends are made. You want to see these guys build their legends and continue their ascent into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, for sure. It's what puts the magic in the game.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're beloved. And it's awesome to see them still playing. I always laugh because it's just it's crazy to me that Brady's still playing, and that he's in the physical condition that he's in, and thank God for him. It seems like he's never experienced any really, really serious injuries. I don't remember him ever being out for more than a few games. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
there was one injury where I think he tore his ACL early, and Matt Castle had to step in, but he ended up leading the Patriots to the playoffs. So Tom doesn't miss often.
Yeah. So, and he's got a lot of fans like myself. So of course, I'd love to see him play, even if it's not for a team that I favor. But yeah, it's definitely is exciting.
Okay, so based on our picks that we just made, we don't have a graphic for this. However, just running down your matchups that you have based on your projected games for the playoffs, this is what it would look like. You have Kansas City with the bye in the AFC.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Miami going to Buffalo, Baltimore going to Cincinnati, and the Chargers going to Tennessee. And that's how the first round in the AFC looks for you for your picks. NFC, you have Green Bay at San Francisco, Giants at Minnesota, and then Dallas at Tampa Bay.
Oh, wow. That'd be a great game.
There's
Dallas
some matchups in there that are exciting. Yeah, that's what we were just talking about.
Right. Even with Green Bay against the Niners, at first thought, I'm I think Niners would steamroll them, but it's Rodgers, so you can't take a break. You can't take a play off against Rodgers either. So that would be really nice to see. Really fun to watch.
So I think those are pretty solid and probably more likely than what I have going on. AFC, with the way it shakes out with my picks, I got Kansas City with the 1 seed, Pittsburgh at Buffalo, Baltimore at Cincinnati, and the Chargers at Jacksonville. So kind of the same, just switch out Pittsburgh and Miami. The NFC, though, gets really juicy. Green Bay, the 7 seed, at the 2 seed Dallas, because the Philadelphia Eagles losing their game would cost them the division.
Wow.
The Giants would go to Minnesota just like you, but Philadelphia would go to Tampa, and the Niners would be the 1 seed.
Yeah, that would still be really crazy.
It would just be madness, dude.
Yeah. But only time will tell.
Exactly. Only time will tell, and we have an exciting end of the season going on.
Yep, definitely.
So
one thing one thing to mention, we will be organizing the Super Bowl Square, so keep an eye out for that if you want to be a part of it. But yeah, what else did we have to cover, Feel the Burn?
I believe that's it. We were finishing up with our picks for Week 18. Super Bowl squares on the agenda for the Super Bowl. Still working on the NFL playoff predictions that we're going to try and assemble a group, and we can send out links through all of our social media platforms, which if you've been watching all show, have been on the ticker on the bottom of this screen. We got our website, k4v3.com, also Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, all sorts of different media platforms that we have. So whatever contests we develop and run out, we will be promoting them on all platforms that we have access to. Just shout out to everyone that has been joining our community on our Discord, following on all, like I said, on all these social media platforms. We appreciate the love, appreciate all the interactions,
100%.
all the engagement. Yeah. We hope to continue and keep this growing and keep this thriving. Like we said, we wanted to add more members to the fantasy league. Maybe if we get enough interest, we can have some of us monitor other leagues that non-admins are in. But yeah, a lot of expansion hopefully coming down the pike. Pretty wild week this past week in sports, Soul.
Yeah.
But happy to be able to talk about this with you on this platform for all of our followers.
Same here.
Look out for us next week with Cave Sports. I am Phil the Burn co-hosting tonight. Soul Controller, other
yes,
co-host.
Sir. Thank you
for the night. Abras Momente, we miss you, buddy. Get well soon, and we hope to see you all week. Be easy, fellas.
All right, take care. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.